There are people out there who once meant the world to me, people who still cross my mind in the quiet hours of the night, yet I never replied to their last message. I never explained why I pulled away. I never said goodbye, and that silence still echoes inside me. When people talk about ghosting, it's often painted as cold, selfish, or manipulative. But for me and for many INFJs, it's never that simple. It's not indifference. It's not a game. It's something deeper, more tangled, and painfully human. Today, I want to explain why people like me, people who feel too much sometimes, disappear from the very connections that once made us feel alive. 1. The invisible burnout of emotional intensity. INFJs love deeply. When I connect with someone, I don't just hear their words, I absorb them. Every tone, every unspoken emotion, every flicker in their eyes. I read the silence between their sentences, like a second language. That ability sounds beautiful, but it's also exhausting. Because over time, I start carrying emotions that don't belong to me. I hold their sadness like it's my own. I internalize their disappointment, their chaos, their wounds. And at first, it feels meaningful, like I'm helping to lighten their burden. But slowly, it becomes too heavy to hold. And when that emotional weight starts to crush me, I don't explode. I withdraw. Quietly. Silently. Almost like I vanish from my own story for a while. Most people think INFJs ghost because they stop caring. But the truth is, we ghost because we care too much. We disappear when the emotional noise becomes unbearable. When the connection that once gave us energy starts to drain it instead. It's like being both the healer and the patient at once. You're trying to mend someone's wounds while bleeding internally. Eventually, your soul whispers, you can't save anyone if you're drowning. So you leave, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. 2. The fear of emotional misunderstanding. When I was younger, I believed that deep connections were unbreakable, that if someone truly saw me, they would always understand why I needed space, why I shut down sometimes. But life has a way of showing you that even people who care about you can completely misread your silence. The INFJ mind is a paradox. We crave connection, yet protect our solitude like a sacred ritual. When I pull away, it's often to recharge, to process, to untangle my thoughts. But to others, it feels like rejection. And explaining that feels impossible. Because how do you tell someone that you love them but can't bear to talk right now? How do you explain that their presence overwhelms you? Not because it's wrong, but because it's too right, too intense, too consuming. So instead of saying any of that, we vanish. Not because we want to, but because we don't know how to stay without losing ourselves. 3. The INFJ pattern. Absorb, analyze, withdraw. There's a pattern I've noticed in myself, something that repeats like a cycle. I meet someone, feel a magnetic pull, and my intuition lights up like a fire. I see who they are beneath their masks. I sense their pain, their potential, their hidden self, and I want to help. I want to be the one who understands them when no one else does. But after weeks or months of giving, listening, and empathizing, I realize something terrifying. I've disappeared in the process. Their emotions start defining my own. Their chaos becomes my inner storm. That's when the analysis begins. My mind starts replaying every interaction, every word. I overthink my tone, my timing, my energy. Did I say too much? Did I read them wrong? Did I make them uncomfortable? And while that mental movie keeps running, my emotional battery drains faster than I can recharge it. So, primera withdraw. I stop replying. I pull away without warning, and I hate myself for it. Because in my heart, I know the other person doesn't deserve confusion or silence. But my inner world is already in chaos, and trying to explain it feels like trying to translate emotions that don't have words. 4. When empathy becomes a burden, empathy is often praised as a gift. And it is until it becomes a wound. I once had a friend who was going through a dark time. Every night, I stayed up with her, talking, listening, holding her through the phone while she cried. She said I was her light in the darkness, but somewhere along the line, her darkness started seeping into me. I began waking up with her anxiety. I felt her sadness, before my own. My body was carrying her pain like a second skin. I didn't tell her that. I didn't want her to feel guilty, but I also couldn't keep going. So one day I just stopped replying. She texted, "Did I do something wrong?" And I stared at the screen, frozen, unable to type the truth. How could I say, "No, you didn't do anything wrong"? It just became too heavy for me to hold. So I said nothing. And in that silence, she probably assumed the worst. To this day, I still feel the sting of that guilt. But that's what it's like being an INF. Jay, you love people deeply, but you also know when the weight of that love becomes unsustainable. 5. The INFJ's silent standard. Emotional authenticity. There's another reason INFJs ghost it's the craving for authenticity. We sense when a connection starts drifting into superficiality, manipulation, or emotional dishonesty. And once that happens, we can't unsee it. When I notice someone's energy changing when conversations become forced, when truth turns into performance, I retreat. For most people, that shift might seem small. But for an INFJ, it's seismic. We can feel inauthenticity like a splinter in the soul. And we can't fake closeness once we've felt that disconnect. So rather than staying in a relationship that feels fake, we quietly step away. To outsiders, that might look like ghosting, but from our side, it's a silent act of integrity. We'd rather vanish than pretend. 6. The overthinking spiral. There's one more piece to this story. The inner overthinking loop that drives the INFJ ghosting instinct. When something feels off in a relationship, my brain starts spinning stories faster than I can stop it. Maybe they don't value me. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I misread everything. That mental storm can last for days. And in that time, I replay every memory like evidence in a courtroom. My emotions and logic start fighting. And before I know it, the safest path feels like distance. Because silence gives me control. It gives me space to breathe, to reset, to figure out what's real and what's projection. But what I forget is that while I'm protecting myself, I'm also leaving someone else in confusion. And that's the heartbreaking irony. The INFJ ghost doesn't vanish to hurt you. They vanish to stop hurting themselves. 7. The misinterpretation trap. Most people who've been ghosted by an INFJ describe it as betrayal, and I understand that completely. It's hard to process silence when you've shared deep conversations and emotional intimacy. It's confusing when someone who once seemed to understand you suddenly disappears. But here's what they don't see: the inner turmoil behind that silence. When I ghost someone, it's never clean or easy. It's sleepless nights, guilt-heavy mornings, and constant wondering if I made the right choice. It's wanting to reach out, but fearing the damage is already done. Sometimes, the person I ghosted moves on quickly, and I feel relief mixed with sadness. Other times, they reach out again, and I freeze unsure if reopening the door would heal or hurt us both. So if you've ever been ghosted by an INFJ, know this. You weren't abandoned out of cruelty. You were loved deeply, but by someone who didn't know how to balance their love with their limits. 8. The reappearance. There's a hidden side to INFJ ghosting that people rarely talk about. The return, weeks, months, sometimes years later, we come back. Quietly, carefully, we send a small message. "Hey, how have you been?" And hope the other person still has space for us. Not because we expect forgiveness, but because we've healed enough to face the unfinished chapter. When I reappear, it's never for closure, it's for honesty. It's my way of saying, I didn't forget you. I just needed to find myself again before I could face you. Some people welcome me back with warmth. Others have built walls. Both reactions are valid. But either way, I show up because I owe them truth after so much silence. 9. Why ghosting hurts us. To people assume ghosting is easier for the one who leaves. But for INFJs, it's often the opposite. Every silence echoes. Every message left unread carries a pang of guilt. We replay our decision in our minds, wondering if we could have handled it better. Because ghosting doesn't just disconnect us from people, it disconnects us from our own empathy, our sense of harmony. And yet, we do it because sometimes it's the only way to protect that inner harmony before it collapses. That's the paradox of being an INFJ. We strive to build emotional depth, But the same sensitivity that creates connection also creates collapse. 10. Healing the INFJ pattern. If you're an INFJ like me, and you've ghosted people you still care about, I want you to know something. You don't need to drown in guilt, but you do need to grow from it. Over the years, I've learned a few ways to stop this pattern before it starts. First, communicate before you disappear. It doesn't have to be a long speech. Just one sentence. I need time to recharge can save months of confusion. Second, learn to separate empathy from responsibility. Feeling someone's pain doesn't mean you have to fix it. Their healing is their journey. Your peace matters too. Third, set emotional boundaries early. Don't wait until you're drained to step back. Check in with yourself regularly. Ask, am I giving out of love or out of fear of being needed? Fourth, forgive yourself. Every INFJ carries a history of silent exits. We've all left people we cared about. What matters is that you learn to stay present without losing yourself. And finally, be honest about your nature. Tell the people in your life that you need solitude. Tell them you sometimes withdraw to think, not because you don't care, but because you do. The right people will understand. 11. The INFJ's love language. Space is not rejection for an INFJ, it's renewal. When we withdraw, we're not walking away from love. We're walking back toward equilibrium. We're refilling the well from which our empathy flows. People often misinterpret our need for space as emotional distance. But for us, space is love. It's how we stay balanced enough to love authentically. If I've ever ghosted you, know that it wasn't the absence of feeling it. It was the overflow of it. 12. Coming full circle, I've learned that ghosting, while painful, can also be a mirror. It shows us the parts of ourselves that are afraid of confrontation, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being seen when we're not okay. For years, I thought silence was protection. But now, I see that communication honest, vulnerable communication is the real form of protection. It protects both your heart and the other person's. So this it is. When I feel the urge to disappear, I pause, I breathe. I ask myself, what am I running from? What conversation am I avoiding? Sometimes, I still need space, but now I take it consciously, not secretly. I leave doors open instead of slamming them shut, and the relationships that survive that kind of honesty, they're the ones worth keeping. 13. The final reflection, INFJs ghost people even when they care, because caring too deeply without balance leads to emotional collapse. We vanish to survive. But I've realized something important. Disappearing doesn't protect love, it only postpones healing. The real courage lies not in leaving silently, but in staying present enough to say, I need space, but I still care. That sentence, those few words can turn ghosting into growth. Because at the heart of every INFJ is not the desire to disappear, but the desire to be understood. And sometimes, understanding begins when we stop hiding behind silence. If you're watching this, and you've ever been ghosted by someone who feels deeply, remember sometimes silence isn't absence. Sometimes it's a soul whispering, I'll come back when I can love you without losing myself.